Welcome to the Empowered Working Mom Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Jocelyn Au Young. Our mission here is to amplify the stories of all moms so that they can be seen, heard, and supported in their motherhood journey, regardless of whether they're balancing motherhood with an external career or choosing to dedicate themselves fully to motherhood. We believe here that everyone has a unique story, and we found that storytelling is an impactful way to connect and learn from one another. Because sharing and listening to each other's stories makes us feel connected, supported, and inspired. We're excited to bring you diverse stories from fellow working moms like you. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and listen in to today's story to feel acknowledged, encouraged, and most importantly, that you're not alone in your experience as a working mom. Hey there, amazing mamas. Welcome back to the Empowered Working Mom Revolution podcast, where we share real stories from real moms who are navigating this beautiful and sometimes messy motherhood journey. But before I share about today's episode with y'all, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the heaviness of what we're experiencing here in the United States and frankly across the world. Whether it's fear, sadness, anger, anxiety, frustration, hopelessness, uncertainty, grief, or confusion, whatever you may be feeling, I want to acknowledge that your emotions are valid and they are welcomed. And if I can offer one thing for us all as we each are navigating our own experience of this season of life and time, I invite you to ponder how we can care for ourselves both mentally, emotionally, and physically first, so that we can care for the people around us. So caring for yourself in order to care for others, what does it mean to care? Well, let me share an acronym I developed because, the teacher in me, I love acronyms. Caring for yourself and others is caring with compassionate curiosity, acceptance of emotions, responding to one's needs, and extending grace to yourself and others. And as the future seems unknown, as it always is, I hold on to the glimmer of hope and light that when you and I intentionally choose to care for ourselves and each other, it produces love, and in the end, love wins. And you know what? I hope that gives you hope, because as for me, I have to remind myself of this every single day. Now, today's conversation is going to make you feel you're not alone and maybe even change how you think about these unexpected life curveballs that we all face. I had the honor of chatting with one of my friends, Maribeth Thomas, a life coach who's currently navigating the empty nest phase of motherhood. And along with coaching, she also hosts the Experiment podcast and coaches high school basketball in her rural Montana community, where she's found peace in the simplicity of small town life. But our conversation today takes us back to an earlier chapter of her story, a time when she was a working mom facing an unexpected life event, a serious health crisis in her family. What started as their biggest challenge transformed into an unexpected journey of growth, strength, and complete lifestyle revolution. So whether you're going through your own tough season right now, or you just need a reminder that you're not alone in this crazy, wild journey of motherhood, then this episode is for you. So as I always say, grab your favorite drink, find a quiet spot if you can, whether that's the car, the bathroom, or the closet, and just soak in this powerful conversation that I had with Maribeth. Without further ado, let's dive in. All right. Hey, Maribeth, welcome to the show. I'm so
Thank
excited to
you.
have you.
I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're going to dive right in because, as you know, we are all about storytelling here on the Empowered Working Mom Revolution podcast. And so I'm excited to hear your story and also to get to know you a little bit more. Maribeth and I are friends and we go way back now. It's been like 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. Hard to believe, but yes.
I know, crazy. So I'm excited to hear more about her story. I can't wait to share that with you all as listeners. So let's just dive right in, Maribeth. I want to hear,
a significant moment in your life that you have had that's really like influenced you as a working mom, and even maybe like where you are now in your season of life. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I feel like there's a couple different moments that I could talk about. But when I hear that question, the first thing that jumps out to me is, gosh, it's probably been about 15 years ago now, I want to say, maybe less than that, 12 to 15 years ago. And I would say it was when my husband was diagnosed with a rare disease, lung disease called sarcoidosis. Um, and it was scary. Like my kids, I think were in, I want to say first and second grade when this diagnosis happened. They were
Wow.
really young. And at the time I was working part-time. Um, and I get a call from my husband that's basically like, you need to come to the hospital. They need to do some tests on me. And I'm like, okay, so, or meet me so that we can go to the hospital. So, because we were both working at the time. So I meet him at the hospital. We're both greeted at the door. They're waiting for us
Oh,
because they're not sure what he has. And it presents as tuberculosis, which is a big deal,
yeah.
right? Yeah. So they put a mask on him, and this was before COVID. So masks were like
Yeah.
it wasn't common like it is now. So put a mask on him, kind of like greet him in like all the garb, send him off to his room to isolate, do all the tests anyway. So that I feel like that was like a super pivotal moment, not only for my work life, my family life, my romantic life, like all of the things in my world really shifted. Um, and yeah, so I feel like that's like the biggest one. He was later, released. We figured out that he has this disease called sarcoidosis. He it was ups and downs with his health for quite some time, which was interesting and really difficult. Being a mom at the time to pretty young kids, difficult to manage like what that looked like for us. And we kind of found an alternative path, mostly out of necessity,
Hmm.
because Western medicine had no answers for us.
Yeah.
And so we went to naturopaths and acupuncture and food. Um, and we were really able to work really hard and totally change everything about our eating so that
Wow.
we could support his healing.
Yeah.
And that was a big shift for me. I never really connected the food piece to our health at that time. I do now. Of
Yeah.
course, it's like much more commonplace now.
Uh-huh.
But at the time, at least in my world, it wasn't, the two didn't collide or
Mm.
even cross over. And so it was a big shift in how we ate. We kind of noticed some things in our own kids, like food allergies or sensitivities, and so we were able to really heal all of us, our whole family, with
Wow.
food as we kind of like, yeah, as we grew up as a family. So that was, one of the pivotal moments for me, for sure.
Yeah. What was it like in that moment when you were experiencing that? And how did you get through that? Because you're a mom with young kids too. Like,
Yeah.
how did you navigate through that? Just yourself as an individual, but also like as a mom too.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm thinking back at that time, and I wasn't just a mom to two young kids. We actually had invited Ryan's half brother to come and live with us. He was 19 at the time. And so, and he was going to school in the area that we were living in at the time. And it was a lot. It was a lot because my husband, we were both on board with having him come and, adding him to our family for a while he figured out what he wanted to do with his schooling. But yeah, it was an interesting navigation. I would say I lived pretty far away from my family at the time, so I didn't really have like my parents to help or Ryan's parents to help. We really had at the time I had a really good support group of other moms um, who I found through who I was actually just kind of paired with in a program called I think it's called the Program for Early Parenthood Support, which is a nonprofit based in the greater Seattle area. And basically when you're pregnant, they kind of like give you this flyer and say like, hey, you might need this extra support. And it was really a godsend for me to find these people who lived in my area, who also had kids my age. And we really supported one another because a lot of us didn't have family in the area. There are a couple that did, but like the 5 of us who were really close at the time didn't really have any family. So we became each other's family. So there was a lot of really good support, mom's night out.
I love those. Yes, mom's
Yeah.
night out.
um, babysitting exchanges, like watching each other's kids so we could just go get groceries without having to navigate going to get groceries with kids.
Yeah.
And, some of those kind of things. So just even, a couple hours here and there. And I feel like that's something that I will be eternally grateful for, having the support of other moms, especially when my kids were young, and then especially as we were kind of navigating some health things with my husband.
Yeah, that community support and that social support is so important,
Yeah.
right? Like it makes you feel like helps you feel like you're not alone.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was pretty huge.
Yeah. It sounds like it really shifted just your lifestyle, like that
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah, it did. At the time, I was I had a lot of feelings about it, right? Like, oh my gosh, I have to learn how to cook differently, and I have to learn how to like what to cook and
Yeah.
how to even shop. Um, and I definitely had feelings around it for sure.
Yeah, because you had to change. You had to make a change.
Yeah, you have to make a change. I had to
Yeah.
make a change in order for my family to thrive, and I felt resistant to that change because I grew up in Montana. Like I'm a meat and potatoes kind of gal. I am Asian though, so I also really like rice and adobo chicken and
Yes.
all of those all of those things too. But those things aren't necessarily the most healthy. And so it was a big shift. It was a big shift for me. Um, and I was resistant to it. So we kind of, we worked through it. We did a lot of juicing. We did a
Oh,
lot
yeah.
of like a lot of different things. We've experimented and tried a whole lot of different things. And we continue to do that to figure out, what's best for us. And there's always something new coming out, right? More research. How can I do this? Plus, as we're aging, we're also figuring out like, how do we best support ourselves as we're, going through this process of
Yeah.
aging, which is always so fun. But yeah, there was a lot of resistance there. I think I will say the things that helped me were one, having that support. I also had a really great yoga community at the time. So that really helped me to just be able to go to yoga, to be on my mat, to kind of be anonymous too in some of those classes and just be a person and not a mom for an hour a day.
Yeah.
And so it really helped me to come back to myself, to realize like, hey, yes, I am all of these things for my family, but I'm also still me. and and how important that is for me to connect back with myself as I'm taking care of all of these other people as well.
I love that. I love how it's like prioritizing your care while you're caring for others. But I really appreciate how you brought up, you're like, I was super resistant, right? Like
Yeah, I mean,
that's
change is
hard.
hard.
Change
Yeah,
is
change is
hard.
hard. Yeah, and whether it's good change or interesting change,
Yeah.
it's always just difficult, right? Even like I think about, like my daughters, and my son are adults now, and there's a lot of change that's going on for them. Like good change, but like new jobs and new apartments and new roommates and all of these things are good things, but it's
Hmm.
still difficult sometimes to just navigate, okay, what is this new existence or what is this change going to look like for me?
Yeah. Do you feel like that significant moment that actually kind of forced you into change, even though you're like resisting because it wasn't something you had planned for? Not
No.
like it's like we can't plan for any change, it just happens. But
Yeah.
do you feel like looking back, that moment helped you have build the resilience, or have the resilience and find the support or the tools that helped you be comfortable with the resistance of change? Or like
Yeah.
how, yeah, your perspective on change now, like that significant moment, it's to me, like I'm listening, I'm like, that's a huge moment, right?
Yeah.
And that really kind of like, you got to make a change whether you like it or not,
Yeah.
because it's like, it's
It
all about,
definitely,
yeah.
yeah, it definitely shifted my perspective.
Uh-huh.
I've never been one to, well, actually, I will not say never. Okay.
Okay.
Like when my husband and I first got married, um, we we had an argument, right? Like this was very early on in our marriage. I want to say probably within the first 5 or 6 months of our marriage, and we're having some sort of argument, and I basically said, "Well, this is how I am. I will never change." Right in the heat of the moment,
Uh,
right?
I've said that too before.
Oh yeah,
I'm there with
and
you.
and And he basically said, okay, well, if that's really how it's going to be, I don't know that this is going to work. I don't know that we're going to be able to grow together if there's no like give or take on the possibility of change. And
Mm,
that for me was really pivotal. And I think having those conversations in my marriage, like for years before this incident happened, really helped me to um, prepare for some of that change, knowing
mm,
that life just comes at us, whether we want it to or not, and whether you're um, making an intentional change where you're like, okay, this is something that I want to change in my life, or something's coming at you and you're like, oh, this is changing.
yeah.
It still impacts you in a very similar way.
Yeah.
So I think my perspective on um, change at that time um, was really impacted by those conversations that I had early on in my marriage. And I would say in the years after, it's also really helped me to just be like, okay, we don't know what the opportunities are for us to grow and to change. Um, but I do believe that looking at them as opportunities instead of, hey, this thing is happening to me, has
Mm,
really helped me to um, embrace change, be okay with change, see that
yeah.
like it really is an opportunity and that I'm not the victim,
Yeah.
that hey, like this is an opportunity not only to help my husband be healthy, but really helped my whole family to have a different lifestyle and be healthy as my kids now are moving into adulthood.
Yeah. It's a very proactive, kind of like empowering stance,
Yes.
even though we
Yeah.
don't have control over when change happens to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do think too, some of those things were happening and I didn't really have the language around what that looked like. I do have the language around it now because I've, as like we met at going through coach training, life coach training, but I didn't really necessarily have at that time like the language to really understand and process like all of this stuff that was happening. Now that I have the language and I have learned a lot more about like reframing and looking at the glass half full and that sort of thing, it really does those little things in your mindset, at least in my mindset and how I've experienced it, have really helped me just in moving forward in my life.
I love that. That's such a good segue, Maribeth. Like into
I'm here for you, Jocelyn.
Well, one, I'm going to say, well, two things that when you're saying that, because this is the reason why I love just sharing these stories, right? Like, and having you and other fellow working moms on this podcast, because your story and the things that you have learned from your own life experiences is opening up the perspectives and teaching others that might not have known that.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm finding that, like, even though someone might not have the exact same experience or significant moment, they might have something similar to that. Right.
Yeah.
And like, I'm just like now thinking about like, oh my gosh, like if I didn't have the language of like reframing like prior to 2020, right? Like, I mean, even when I started therapy 2015, I think I was still like processing all my past, but like it wasn't until coaching, I think I learned the mindset stuff, right? And I just love that you share that here, because those who are listening, it's like, you don't need to go to life coaching, just listen here. Maribeth just taught you about it.
Well, and I do want to say, like, it really does help because, like fast forward, 10 years, 15 years later, I had my own health problems, right? I had my own health issues and I have had to kind of navigate through those and being the one, not the caretaker, but actually being the one that had some significant health things going on. It was very interesting to experience it as the one that, first of all, as the person going through the health things, but also like I'm a totally different person than I was those 15 years ago. And I really felt like I was able to navigate it in such a different way than I would have if that had happened to me earlier in my life. It would have felt, I really do feel like I would have really felt like a victim. Like, how can this be happening to me? Why?
Yeah.
All of the things when, we don't know what our cells are going to do. And we don't know, like how our body's made up or what sort of like outside things we're exposed to that will like trigger something in our genes. Like, who knows? Right? Like we just really don't know. And so I feel like going through that experience with my husband and seeing how he navigated it also helped me to navigate my own health journey 10 years later. 15.
Yeah. So if you could share, what is one of the biggest challenges that you've gone through and what are some like tools or ways that you got through that challenge?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many. I wish that I could say that that life has just been, easy and smooth, but life has its ups and downs, whether you're whatever situation you're in. And so I definitely would say like one of the most challenging things that I've been through is the health scare of my husband. It was pretty dire. And I can talk lightly of it now, but it was not, it was scary. It was really scary because I didn't know if he was going to make it. And I had young kids, and it was a totally different, it was a totally different picture that I had envisioned for myself. And I think that that was the hard thing, was like, oh, I have to shift my expectations of what this
Mm.
life might look like. And instead of really having to shift, I fought hard, and my husband fought hard to like, no, like this is what we want. We're gonna fight like hell to like make sure that we're healthy and make sure that he's healthy, and 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 reach out for support from the naturopath, from the acupuncturist, from the meditation and the yoga and all of the things that we did to get him back on track. So yeah,
Yeah.
and really I mean, looking back now and even just talking about it, you know, I'm really proud of how we navigated that, and I wouldn't change it. Like, I am such a different person. If I wouldn't have gone through that, I don't know that I would be who I am today. Um,
Mm.
if we hadn't have gone through that as a family.
Yeah. I'm hearing you together made that choice together.
Yeah,
Like you didn't allow the like, oh, it shouldn't have been this way. Like that narrative. You didn't allow
yeah,
that to
yeah,
take y'all
yeah.
down.
Yeah. I mean, it was scary. It was
Yeah.
scary. And there were times where we're like, oh, I don't know if we're going to be able to like climb this mountain.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what this is going to look like.
Yeah.
And yeah. Yeah, my mom, I'm actually thinking about that. Like, the turning point for us was my mom came out and watched the kids one weekend, and my husband and I went up to the San Juan Islands and just had some time um together. And um we just decided then and there that like that weekend that we would like start being like cooking for my husband. We would start like doing vegan dishes and like figure all of this stuff out. So I like bought a bunch of vegetables. We took them to this little like place in the San Juan Islands. We just really had a nice time to kind of reset the two of us together,
Mm.
to be like, and he started feeling better. Like, he he started to have some hope. And that's kind of like the pivotal point for me, that I was like, oh, okay, we can actually do this together. Um, yeah, so there you go.
Wow. It's like making it's like intentionally making that time and space.
Yeah.
One
Yeah.
to
I mean, we had been told, like, hey, by the naturopath, hey, I really think that you should try this sort of a diet for a little while and
Mhm.
see what happens. And my
Yeah.
husband was like, I think, like, I do feel better when I'm only eating this way. Let's give it a try and see what happens. And so I was like, okay, let's let's see what we can do. And yeah, and I made some spaghetti squash with some marinara sauce, and off we went.
That sounds delicious.
It is. It's still one of our favorites to this day.
It sounds like that, it's like the most significant, but also one of the biggest challenges that you've overcome together, not just yourself, but together as a family
Yeah.
and as a married couple. Um, I'm curious, is that also like a difficult decision? Were there difficult decisions in that significant moment that you had to make and have leaps of faith? Or is there other
Mm, I think there's always a leap of faith when you try something new.
or change?
Yeah, right? There's always a little bit of like, I don't know how this is going to go. And as you know, like, we heard this phrase over and over in our coaching weekend, when it's all an experiment. And for me, it really is like, it's all an experiment. So you're always taking a leap of faith with whatever change or newness that you decide to conquer, right?
Yeah.
You still have to jump.
Okay, but what emotions do you feel when you are doing that? Because I'm like, And how do you work with those? Like, how do you hold those emotions while
Yeah.
you're taking that leap of faith? Because
Yeah.
like,
Well, there's
yeah,
definitely a lot of fear, right?
hmm
There's always a bit of fear,
yeah,
because we don't know what it's going to look like. And I mean, I had no idea if this was going to work, if like changing my husband's diet was going to heal him. It
oh,
did, with a lot of help from other practitioners, like, just like pulling inflammation out of his body with cupping and, some of the alternative medicines. But also, I really didn't know.
mm,
But we didn't really have another choice, right? We didn't really have like, okay, well, try this other thing. No, there wasn't really anything else to try. It was like, okay, let's just give it a try and see what happens. Yeah, there was a ton of fear because I mean, this was literally life and death. And so yeah, it was an interesting way to I feel like I don't really know, like when I'm thinking back, I don't really know how I felt in the moment.
mhm,
I I think that I felt like at least there's something to hang on to for hope.
uh,
Like, hey, there's
mhm,
something here that I can grab onto that's like that gives me a little bit of like hope.
yeah,
And so I was grabbing on with all that I could, and I think my husband was doing the same. Um, I can't speak for him, but I believe that he, it was something that we could jump into. And yeah, it was scary. It was scary, but so was the alternative. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's like holding both. It's like, okay, which one do I want to hold on to
yeah,
more and take action on?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you had some lasting wisdom, and lasting, I don't know if that's the right word, but parting wisdom to give to our listeners, what would that be?
I would say to um, pay attention to your mindset
Mm,
and to notice what you're telling yourself. We are really powerful beings, and our words to ourselves are not always kind. And so
oh,
how can you look at the glass half full, or how can you see the opportunity that's being presented, or even if it's a challenge, right? How can you how can you reframe the situation that you're in?
mm, that's so powerful because that helps you shift your perception of what you're experiencing.
Yeah. Easier said than done, I will
Yeah.
say, right? It's like easy for me to say that, and I'll get into a situation, I'll just be like, "Oh my gosh, this is dire." Right? And so I don't want to gloss over like with and sprinkle it with rainbows. It's not easy to when
Yeah.
you're in a situation that does feel heavy, or you're feeling like a victim,
Yeah.
to um to try to look at it from a different perspective. And I think that's really the opportunity, is to how is there a different perspective that I'm not seeing?
Yeah.
And how can I move forward in the way that I want to show up, in the way that I want to move forward?
How do you do that in in the moment? I hear this a lot. Is that like when I'm in the heat of the moment, it's so hard for me to see this the moment that I'm in, the glass half full, or like, to change my mindset because I'm just in the heat of the moment.
I don't think you can sometimes, to be honest. I
Um,
think that maybe it's okay for you to look at it as this is a dire circumstance, and whatever, Debbie Downer,
yeah.
right? I think sometimes we as life coaches gloss over the importance of that,
Hmm.
because I do think that it's important to feel like, oh, this is really hard, this really sucks, this is difficult. And that's true. It
Yeah.
absolutely is true. And so maybe you don't in the moment try to be optimistic about it.
Yeah.
Maybe in the moment you just feel however it is that you're feeling.
Yeah.
And then you take some time to reflect. Why did I feel this way? How
Yeah.
can I look at it differently? It doesn't all have to be in one thing. Like you can't,
Mhm.
sometimes it's so difficult to be in the moment of like, this is really hard, and be like, but what's the opportunity?
Don't throw some rainbows and shit on it. Just
Yeah,
see it.
exactly. Right? No, it's really hard. And just
Yeah.
like sit with that. It's okay for it to be hard. It's okay for it to
Mhm.
be hard. And
Yeah.
it was hard for me. It like that didn't all happen like overnight. That was definitely like, a few years of like clawing our way back out, right? And figuring out like what was going to work to get him healthy, and for me to figure out, okay, well, what's my role in all of this?
Yeah.
And also to be like, I need to go back to work or I'm going to go insane. Like, yes, I'm all of these things for my family, but also I need to have my own things too, so that
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just a person
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And so it was like finding myself in all of that as well. And so I think it's important to sometimes to not look at it optimistically. Sometimes just sit in it for a little bit, see how you feel, and then reflect. Are there opportunities for me to look at this in a different perspective? And can I shift my mindset? And if I can, what does that look like for me?
Yeah. I love what you just shared right now, because it's like it reminds me of this how getting comfortable with the discomfort,
Yeah.
right? And but also like being aware, like what you're saying is like being aware, like allow yourself that discomfort, allow yourself to sit in the mucky shit and all the direness and
Yeah.
all the emotions, but also allow yourself the time to reframe,
Hmm.
to look at it again a second time,
Hmm.
and not just sitting in it and letting it just
Yeah.
marinate.
Don't
Just
get stuck there.
don't
Yeah.
marinate in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does remind me of, a lot of times in yoga, you s- they use the metaphor of the lotus flower, right? The roots are in the mud, right? They're in the muck. But there's always like you're always looking for the light. That
Oh,
plant is growing out of the mud and looking for the light and coming up above the water so that it can find the light and bloom. So it's not just sitting there at the bottom of the pond in the muck.
yeah.
It's but it has to start there. It has to start there. And sometimes I think we forget about starting starting there, and like feeling that mucky muck and feeling the discomfort. But
Yeah.
that's part of the journey as well.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Well, I really love hearing your story. I mean, I kind of knew, but I'm knew your story, but then hearing just like your own, like the underneath, the under layer of your story, and how you went through that, and how it's like now I'm like, oh, I have such a better understanding of like who you are today, and like your resiliency and your strength, just even as your friend. I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing. That's really
Thanks.
amazing. And why you do the work that you do now, right, as a coach
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah.
So we're gonna wrap it up with a fun game here called
Okay.
Mom Moment in a Minute. So
Okay.
I'm gonna throw at you 3 questions, and share with us your first response. So the first one is,
Okay.
to have a moment of peace and quiet to yourself, which place would you choose? Bathroom, car, bedroom, or closet?
Car.
What's your favorite thing to do with your kids?
At this point, just being with them, to be honest with you, like we're all spread out all over the place. So anytime that all 4 of us are together, or even the 3 of us are together, it's a rare moment. So whatever it is, I don't even care, just as long as we're together.
And your kids are grown adults now, right?
Yeah. So I have a 22 and a 20. Well, almost 22. So 20 and almost 22.
Oh my gosh. And last question, to relax, what would you choose? Spa, hike, nap, read, or craft?
Ooh, I only can choose one.
Yeah.
All of the above. I think if I want to reset, it's definitely hike. If I need a little pampering, it for sure is like a mani-pedi, a spa, or a massage. I also really like to read and doodle. So all of those things, really all of the above. But I think my go-to is really just going for a walk and being in nature. That helps me. Really.
Well, thank you for sharing your answers to those mom moments in a minute. And thank you so much for just your time and sharing your story and just your own reflections and lessons, and even just that parting wisdom of like sitting in the muck and also allowing ourselves as moms to reframe, right? Because it's so easy for us to just be in that self-critical place and also be in that muck and get stuck in it very often. So
yeah,
I really,
as long as you keep looking for the light, that's all that really matters.
Keep looking for the light. Keep looking for the light. Keep looking. Yeah. Well, thank you, Maribeth, for being on the show and just sharing with us your story.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me. It's been an honor.
Alrighty, moms, I hope you enjoyed and feel empowered and seen from today's conversation. Our mission here on the podcast is to amplify the stories of all moms so that you can be seen, heard, and supported in your motherhood journey, regardless of whether you're balancing motherhood with an external career or choosing to dedicate yourself fully to motherhood. And we would appreciate your support because your support matters. And here are 3 ways to support the mission of the podcast. First, you can leave a rating on Apple Podcasts so more moms can discover this podcast. You can select a star rating by scrolling down on the Empowered Working Mom Revolution show page in the Apple Podcast app. 2, you can write a review on Apple Podcasts so more moms can find a place of solace, comfort, and belonging through this podcast. You can do this by scrolling down on the Empowered Working Mom Revolution show page in the Apple Podcast app and tap Write a Review. And lastly, make a one-time donation to the podcast for as little as $7 or whatever amount feels best for you. You can click the link in the show notes to make a donation. We appreciate your support, and thanks again for listening in and joining me here on the podcast. I look forward to sharing with you another inspiring mom moment story next week. So until next Wednesday, moms, have a great day.